I've never done a comic book review, so this is my first one, and I'm really excited to dig into something that I've been reading for a while. This Earth 1 series. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. There's these 3 volumes that I've read out of Superman that I'm excited to dig into, so let's kick this off. Superman Earth 1, Volume 1. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk comic book review for Superman Earth 1 Volume 1. This Earth 1 series, I found it on a fluke, and I'm so excited I did because I've read the 3 volumes of Superman, I've read the 2 volumes of Batman, I can't wait to read the volume of Wonder Woman that's out for this Earth 1 series. It's just so good, and this is probably my favorite comic book telling of Superman, like put to the comic book page. I've read Superman Birthright, I've read Superman Last Son of Krypton, I've read a lot of really good Superman comics, and this, not just this origin one, but this series so far of Superman is my favorite Superman story put to the page. And what's really cool about this is I read this before Man of Steel, so it was cool to see Man of Steel and see how much of Man of Steel was really inspired by this, the way that Batman vs. Superman had a lot of inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns. Man of Steel really did take a lot out of the pages of this. I mean, a lot of familiar imagery. I mean, the whole thing where the beam is on Superman holding him down to the ground. You have that in this comic book with this red beam. It's a red sun energy beam, and it's holding Superman down to the ground and things like that. So they took a lot of imagery. They took a lot of familiar plot points, like Zod broadcasting to the world, "Your world has housed one of my citizens." You have the same thing with this villain here, Tyrell. He's broadcasting to the world, "There's someone among you who is not one of you." So like, it definitely took inspiration from this. But one thing is, I was reading through this that I think I really like better, especially when I was reading through this again just to do this review, is the way they tell the story of Superman, the story of his motivation for why he does what he does. And what's so interesting about this is this movie opens with him in kind of a lost state. You know, his father, Jonathan Kent, recently passed away. He's in his early 20s. He's moving out on his own for the first time. He's going to Metropolis, and his mother's just like, "Why don't you fly to Metropolis? You got all these powers." He's like, "No, I can't fly. That's too fast. I need to take the train because I have to think about this." So we have a Superman that's lost. So when you watch Man of Steel, you see him be lost and that he becomes this fisherman dude. You know, he works in a like restaurant bar thing. You kind of see him do kind of different odd jobs around as he's trying to find who he is in the world, try to find some clue to his people and who he is. This one's a little bit different, and I actually really like this one's take on it. Because what you have is the Kents, who again and again say in this, "If we had it our way, son," and they made him his Superman suit out of the blankets that came in the ship that brought him to Earth. They're like, "If we had it our way, son, you would be a hero out there saving the world and making a difference. But you have these gifts, so you don't have to do it that way. We, as your parents, also want you to be happy too, and you need to figure out where you fit in this world." And they have great imagery of this, like where Superman in Metropolis, he's walking by a glass window and he looks in and there's like this girl on a date, but his reflection is covering the date, so it kind of looks like he's on the date, but he's not, because he's on the outside of that window and he's looking in, wishing he was a part of that. So what this comic book does is set you in the mindset is he's different. And while everybody in his school as he's growing up, they knew he was different. They didn't know he was superpowered. They didn't know he was Kryptonian. They didn't know any of that. But he lived with his life hiding something, hiding a part of himself, because his parents said, keep that part of yourself a secret, and in the right time, step out in the light. In this comic book, they're always encouraging him to step out into the light, but they want him to have a normal as possible childhood and a normal as possible life. And so they're just trying to teach him how to have a balance, which I thought was really interesting. But he has all these bullies and stuff in school because, like, they could tell he's hiding something. They could tell he's holding something back, and it makes him a little bit weird. So, of course, he stands out, and they pick on him. And so now that develops into this fear for him that he has put himself under. Like, he desperately wants to fit in, so he doesn't want to step out into the light and reveal himself to the world because he wants to fit in. But what's really interesting is the way he goes about town trying to figure out what to do with his life. Some scouts saw him playing football in Smallville, so they send him here to Metropolis, and he shows up, and, you know, he's a small guy, and I actually kind of like that Superman's a small guy. And this coach of this team, he's like, my scout is normally good. What are you doing here, kid? Did you sign the waiver? Like, I don't want you to die. And then Superman does so good because he's Superman in these football tryouts here that basically they offer him a contract with a blank check. Whatever you want, we'll pay you whatever you want to do this. Superman then goes over into this lab. And so he's trying to get a job there. And the guy's like, dude, we hire only 5 PhDs a year out of the biggest Ivy League schools. And you went to, what, Smallville Junior College? No, man. No. So Superman looks up at this equation, like, you know, freaking Good Will Hunting, and solves this equation that they've been trying to solve for years, and they had predicted 3 years left to solve it, and he does it like that. So they're going to pay him whatever he wants to be paid to work there. Then they do this really cool montage of him playing baseball, construction, whatever else. What this really shows is he could have done anything, and he could have been anything. But none of it was satisfying him, and that was kind of interesting. He goes to the Daily Planet, and here's the interesting thing. Of all these things that he could do, it was Perry White who said, yeah, your articles from Smallville, they're okay. They're not bad, but they're not great. You write like you're holding something back, so I have no job for you right now. But go ahead and fill out an application. I'll consider you later, but when I do consider you, you have to prove yourself to me. Perry White and the Daily Planet are the first people to pose a challenge to Superman's super smarts and everything that he's capable of. This is the first thing he's encountered that has applied the pressure and the challenge to him. And I thought, that's interesting. So he threw away the application. So every bit of that I thought was an incredibly interesting take on the character of Clark Kent and him going about to find his place in the world. And then we have really cool concepts where, you know, Jonathan and Martha could not take the Kryptonian ship, so they got the blankets and they got baby Kal-El out of there, but the government got a hold of the ship. So for 20 years, they've had this ship, and they find these microscopic things where Kryptonians have written their language on the atoms and the molecules that make up the ship. The ship is able to generate more mass and self-repair itself. So the ship becomes a character unto itself, and it really actually has this AI, and it becomes a thing that teaches Clark about, you know, his Kryptonian heritage and things like that. But the way that they do the ship, the way that it's been held in this government facility in Metropolis for 20 years is interesting. And so then you have this alien race that shows up, so all the gizmos and Clark's ship turn on, so they're all really impressed, and they're also really scared because, you know, aliens are invading. So this guy Tyrell and his people, they come from the same solar system as Kryptonians, where Krypton was the 4th planet in that solar system. They were the 5th. And every 20 years, their planets would come close enough, and then they would just, you know, fight each other, because that's what we living beings do. We find reasons to pick on each other and fight each other. So that's exactly what goes on here. So really, before Kal-El even makes it to Earth, you have these 2 planets at war with each other until finally Tyrell's planet kind of conquers Krypton because some mysterious figure gives them a technology that will dig deep into the core of Krypton and destroy Krypton slowly from the inside out in a way that Kryptonians won't necessarily notice, except for the smart ones like Jor-El. And I thought that was a unique take on the destruction of Krypton, that it really was war and a warring species that brought about the end of their world and this weapon. So they bring these drill weapons to Earth, and they're going to drill into Earth. But what's really interesting about when they show up, like I said earlier, Tyrell does the broadcast like Zod does and Man of Steel and all that stuff, and I like how they address the language issue in this, though, where he's like, gosh, you know, we would have broadcasted sooner, but it took us like a whole 10 minutes to learn all your languages and dialects and get all that in there. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys, get unified here. It's like wow, that's actually kind of hilarious, and how powerful y'all are that you can learn every language in 10 minutes. Anyway, I thought all that was kind of interesting. They show up, and what they do is they show up guns a-blazing. You don't show up and ask for Kal-El first. They show up and blow up major parts of cities. Superman does nothing because he has a shard of his ship, and when they show up, all his ship turns on, and it sends a signal out to the shard that he has, which it's coded to his DNA, so it sends a message straight to his brain, and in his brain, he starts to, you know, he passes out, and he's getting all these flashbacks to Jor-El and Krypton, his parents putting him in the ship, so he's not doing anything at first because he doesn't know what's going on, because he's unconscious getting fed all this Kryptonian knowledge, which is really interesting. He wakes up, he sees the world's in trouble, and he's got to make a decision. But what was really cool was what inspired Superman to finally step into the light. So you have Tyrell, who's destroying the Earth, and he goes, hey guys, nothing personal, I'm destroying you because I think you might be housing a Kryptonian. So if you have adopted him, I'm gonna make him mad by blowing up as much of you as I can until he finally can't handle the guilt anymore and steps out into the light to fight me. Then I'll kill him. And then I might let you live. But if any of you knows where he is, I might let you live if you tell me. But I'm gonna keep blowing you up to, provoke him to step into the light. It's a very interesting thing that they do with this bad guy. And this guy wants to do it because he made a deal with this mysterious figure that, destroy every last child of Krypton and we will give you great gifts and great things and blah, blah, blah. But one son of Krypton survives. So they've spent 20 years searching the universe to find the one son that survived so they can get the rewards that were promised to them, which I thought, well, that's intriguing. And of course, we never figure out who this shrouded figure is. We never figure out this other motivation, which adds to a build-up. You're building to something the CW shows are lacking right now. Arrow, Flash, and all that. They're not building to an epic something. So right here, even with the revealing of Superman and Superman stepping into the light, we now see that we're building towards something. We don't know what we're building towards yet, but they've set up that there's something bigger that has brought them here. And now we're building towards what that is. And I thought that was pretty brilliant the way that's written. But what's awesome is what makes Superman step into the light. He starts to zoom fast and do things and destroy the troops on the ground. And he moves so fast nobody can see him. So he's not quite stepping into the light. And Tyrell's getting mad. We need him to step into the light. But it's Jimmy Olsen, best friend of Superman, who's trying to take a picture of these robotic soldiers. And so he's standing there snapping these pictures. And the soldier goes, "Are you Kryptonian? You're not afraid. You're not leaving." He goes, "No. But I'm here for the truth. So I need to be here and photograph the truth and photograph what's going on. And I won't back down because that's how important the truth is." And Superman, with his super hearing, is seeing this go on. And just as Jimmy's about to get killed by this thing, Superman zooms in, destroys the thing, and then puts on the costume that his mom made for him. And then he steps out and he's Superman. Like, Jimmy Olsen and Jimmy Olsen's bravery inspired him to be like, "I'm done hiding in the shadows. I'm stepping out and I'm taking care of business." And he does, and it's actually a pretty epic fight. And mixed in with this fight, as he's fighting Tyrell, we keep going back to these flashbacks to things Jonathan and Martha would say to him to encourage him to be this hero. They encouraged him actively to step into the light. They're like, "Look, dude, this is a big deal. And if you step out as a hero, you will lose more than you gain. So you have to know that going in. But you have these gifts and you can't just keep them hidden. The day will come when you need to step into the light." And I love what Jonathan says, "A day will come, son, when you will finally not have to hold back, but you can let loose." And as that text is popping up in the panels, Clark is just walloping on Tyrell. It's awesome. So really, I'm going to give this like an A+. Like, this is an A+ comic. It's such an interesting take on Superman. It's an interesting take on Clark Kent. And kind of like Man of Steel, there's really no Clark Kent hiding behind the glasses until the end of this. And honestly, I don't know how the glasses are enough, even in this comic, to, have nobody recognize him, especially since he showed up at the Daily Planet once before with no glasses, and they still realized that this was Clark Kent. So the only time the glasses worked for me was Christopher Reeve playing Superman. Like, he played Clark Kent as such a clumsy goof that you would never believe that guy could be Superman. He made that different. I think it would be interesting with, iPhones that you can't open without facial recognition nowadays, to have a Superman where when he steps into the light, he has no secret identity to hide behind. That would be an interesting take, I think. But this is a really great take. This is a fantastic Superman story. I'm giving it an A+ for how much I like this, but also how well the other 2 volumes I've read carried on this story. So I'll be diving into those later, but this is my A+ rating for Volume 1 of Superman Earth 1. Have you read this comic? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, what is your favorite comic book series? It can be DC, it can be Marvel, it could be something other than DC and Marvel. What is your favorite comic book or favorite comic book series? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell next to it so that way you're notified for Volume 2 when I drop my review for Volume 2 of this series. And I can't wait to dive into that and talk about that. Tomorrow I'm doing a theological analysis on Justice League War, and I'm super excited to go into that awesome animated movie and do a theological analysis on it. Can't wait, man. So hit the subscribe button so you're notified when that drops. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.